One of the biggest mistakes we see players making is that they focus way too much on just aiming. They run around the map like headless chickens looking for an aim duel that they pray that they'll win. The misconception made here is that players start believing that taking and winning as many aim duels as possible will win them games. And while this certainly is a factor to consider, there's way more to winning rounds and games than meets the eye. We're going to make things easy for you though. Here's one rule. That's right. Just one rule that you can follow that'll drastically increase your ability to win rounds and thus improve your win rate. So, without further ado, let's dash right on into it. Before we get into it, this video is just a glimpse of what we can offer you. If you want a full, detailed guide on how to improve in Valorant, then you want to check out our website at SkillCapped.com. More on that at the end of the video. This is called the give and take rule. Now, before we get into this rule, you need to understand the concept of map control. There are multiple choke points and areas in a map. As the name suggests, map control refers to how many of these areas you and your team have taken over. Each side starts off with some level of map control. For example, as a defender, you have access to and therefore control of each site at the start of a round. You may also have control of certain choke points such as Garage on Haven. Attackers will also have easy access to certain areas of the map based on where the spawn barriers are. A few quick steps and you got it. You won't have control of the big choke points that are required to enter the sites. That's the defender's territory, and your goal is to take it away from them so you can plant the spike and win. The more control you have over the map, the more likely you are to win the round. Because of that, you always want to have more control, or at the very least the same amount of control, over the important areas of the map than the enemy. Now here's where the give and take rule comes to play. Regardless of what side you're on, you and your enemy are fighting for land. If the enemy successfully takes control of an important point of the map, you have to fight for another point to offset that. This is an extreme example, but think about if you were at war. If you just let the enemy constantly take land after land that you own, you'll eventually run out of land and you'll lose the war. To stay in the fight, you have to take that land back or take a piece of land that the enemy owns. This concept applies to Valorant too. One example where you'll see this come into effect is taking B site on Haven. A common play we see players making is a simple push into the middle, and then executing straight into the B site with smokes onto a link and C link. Seems like a solid plan at first glance. Most teams will only put one player onto the B site. That player will likely be forced to back away or will stay and at most get one before getting eliminated. So your team now has control of the B site. That's great. But if we take a look at the overall map control in this situation, it suddenly looks much less favorable. Your whole team is around B site, and maybe cubby of B site. That's all your team has control of, while the enemy team has the potential to take control of every choke point around the B site. There's likely going to be defenders rotating over to A-Link and C-Link, so that's 2 points that they can push onto the B site from. If the defenders also apply the give and take rule, you'll be in big trouble. In this case, if your team was to take B side, the defenders would push down Garage and start flanking from that direction. They could also start pushing over from A into window and then flanking middle in a similar fashion. Now your team is surrounded from all three angles. It's very easy for the defenders to pinch the site and overwhelm your team. They have plenty of space to work with while you're all cramped around the site. This is a prime example of when one side takes control of one area, but then ends up giving up several other areas to the enemy. The balance actually doesn't become in your favor, even though it feels like it did when you take over the site, and especially when you're able to plant the spike. To further emphasize this, here's a pro example in the finals of VCT Champs in 2022.
And not necessarily a bad call. Correct call as it stands, noting that we do have there's less on the other side, sat deep towards kind of the stairs, almost CT, back up towards Heaven. So there should be a plan here. I do wonder if they try and get someone potentially early towards CT or get a little ahead of it. And it looks like they're trying that, absolutely. Feel they've been given a little bit of freedom here. How much space do they try and take? FNS trying to maybe set up Victor a little here, but see how diligent they are on the way back in. Once again, Loud are notoriously good at this.
So FNS caught on that one, and actually the Arkansas might even fall to this, but pinch comes through. Sadak and Lesser found kills. Aspas over the top now. He's found Yay.
He's found Marv. It's just instantaneous. Loud have a talent, and you are watching it in droves.
Look at the...
Loud is set up to play retake on the A site. As a result, the A player plays very passively and is really only seeking information rather than actually defending the site. This allows Optic to creep up onto the site and take it fairly easily. Everything looks good here, but let's dive into the situation more deeply. First, Optic is down a man, which will make it much harder to defend the spike. From there, Optic has 3 players on the site itself and 1 player lagging behind at A short. There's nothing watching the flank, so Optic is forced to split up a split to cover all angles. Having to split up and being on a man disadvantage puts Optic in a very unfavorable situation. Loud is in control of the situation. Knowing this information, something has to be done to try to tip the odds more in Optic's favor. Victor ends up pushing spawn early on in an attempt to snag some frags and take control of that choke point. If this point was taken cleanly, the odds would have swung much more in Optic's favor. They'd have control of a big choke point that the defenders have to go through. Suddenly, a dire situation is much more winnable. Unfortunately, this attempt doesn't end up working out as the strength in numbers and team play of Loud was too strong. Optic actually didn't play this round all that bad considering what they were dealt with though. This situation occurred due to Loud getting an early pick and not giving up any space to Optic for the rest of the round. If you're already up, there's no need to go for more and risk losing the lead. Loud did just that. They maintained their man advantage and edge on map control, and Optic weren't able to pounce back. Now we'll get into how to utilize the rule in these situations in just a second, but we want to reiterate this point for a common scenario we see that's a big reason that many players struggle on defender side. Let's take a look at one of my own overtime rounds on Split. We're playing defense, and the round starts with an aggressive push down middle by the attackers. Our teammate goes down, and we lose B Heaven. Knowing he could get pinched now, our B player gives up the B site. So we've just lost 2 massive parts of the map and took nothing back. If the enemy pushed B, they'd likely get it and would win the round. Because we don't have any map control or information, I had to guess where the enemy was going, and I started hovering towards spawn in the direction of B. This ends up being a mistake though, as I now gave up tower as well. At this time, we really only have the A site itself, spawn, which isn't that useful, and vents. The enemy ends up doing a mid to A split without much difficulty as there's only 1 player there to stop them. We get smoked off spawn and screens too, so now there's really only our Cypher that can defend the site against 5 attackers. We simply just get overwhelmed as we gave choke point after choke point. There was nowhere safe for us to play and help out. We lost the round without really giving much of a fight after the enemy got the first pick. This is a big mistake we see low elo players making all the time. They respect the attackers a bit too much, and as a result, are playing far back and giving away map control for free. This makes it way easier for attackers to just barge in and take your sites. Alright, so how can we fix this? Well, if we don't have enough map control, then we need to take some. Let's go back and replay the B site scenario on Haven again, but with a few tweaks. We can still push the B site, but instead of all 5 players barging in, we leave 1 player at window. With this player positioned here, we now have middle and the B site. This extra control makes it much harder for the defenders to successfully flank the team. The window player can watch for a garage flank and also a flank from A main. Having a player here also allows the players on site to have a better point of focus. They don't need to worry about the flank if someone's watching it. Some decisions can be spontaneous, which can cause things to get hectic in the moment though. Let's say we forgot to leave someone behind, and now we have 5 players on site. If this is the case, we need to take control of a choke point to have a better chance of defending the spike. A way to do this is to have multiple players on the team pushing A-Link or C-Link. Having control of one of these choke points will provide much more space for the team to work with to defend the spike. It also gives the defenders less room to work with. They won't have as many points of attack, and thus, it's harder for them to successfully push and enter the site. A sneakier option with similar results is to have a player lurk into garage and take control of that. If the coast is clear, they could sneak their way up window or onto C-Link to flank the enemy. This would have to be done relatively quickly though, before the enemy has time to set up and execute the retake. And that's all we have for today's video. Follow the give and take rule and you'll find yourself winning way more rounds than before. If the enemy takes an area, take back another area. The more you take and the less you give, the bigger of an advantage your team will have.
Remember though, if you're really looking to improve at Valorant, then you've got to check out SkillCapped.com. Over on the site, we have hundreds of hours of exclusive content designed to take your game to the next level. It's also all backed by our rank improvement guarantee, meaning if you don't improve while actively using our service, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. We do this because our service works, and if it doesn't work, you shouldn't pay. So, what are you waiting for? Get started on your climb at SkillCapped.com, link in the description below.
As always, we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.